Now that I know I meet all the prerequisites, you can click Add Roles and Features in Server Manager. That's on the Dashboard tab. Or you can click Manage and Add Roles and Features is here as well. Once I select that, it's going to carry me to this Before You Begin, which gives you some basic information like you need an administrator account with a strong password, you need a static IP address for many of these services, make sure you have the most current Windows updates. We satisfy all of those requirements, so we will just click Next. For the installation type, I am using role-based or feature-based. The Remote Desktop Services installation is specifically for Virtual Desktop Infrastructure, or VDI. That's where your clients in your environment, they don't actually run their operating system locally on their computer. It gets streamed to them through this Virtual Desktop Infrastructure service. That's a very different configuration. Everything we look at is role-based or feature-based installation. So that's what we're going to choose. Ensure that is selected. Now we'll choose Next. This is my computer, RTS-DC1. This is the static IP address, 192.168.1.250. We'll click Next for that. For server roles, Active Directory Domain Services is the role I want, so I'll just select that. In this pop-up, it tells us it's going to install Group Policy Management and some other Active Directory tools. Just click Add Features and those will be added in. I'll click Next. On the features, we have no features that we're going to select, so we'll click Next past the Select Features. Now this is just informative. It tells me that Active Directory Domain Services, which we'll just call ADDS, stores information about users, computers, other devices on the network, helps administrators securely manage this information, helps share and collaborate between users. Just information about the role itself. We'll click Next. Now I will just click Install, and it's going to install that role. Now this is really a two-step process. This installs the role, so really the software side has been installed when this is complete. We still have to go through the configuration after this is done. Now that that is complete, you can click Promote the server to a domain controller, or what I end up doing all the time is when this is done, I end up clicking Close. So if you close this, you can simply go to this notifications here in Server Manager, and you'll see Promote this server to a domain controller. So don't worry if you close the window, notifications will have the link for you. So when I click that, I'm going to put this in full screen so it's a little easier to see. It'll ask me if I want to add a domain controller to an existing domain. So if you already have a domain already set up and you just want to put a second or third domain controller in it, that's the option you would choose. If you already have a domain, you already have a forest, if you want to add a new domain, well, for example, if I already have my domain and now I want to add a child domain, then I would choose option 2. The last option is to add a new forest. That's what I want to do. I want to add a new forest altogether. I'm going to name my forest rtsnetworking.com. So that'll be the root domain name, and I'll just click Next at the bottom. At the top of the screen, on the domain controller options, we have functional levels. Your functional level determines the oldest operating system that you can run on a domain controller. I am running Windows Server 2019. That's the operating system we're using. Microsoft has not created a functional level specifically for Windows Server 2019. So you'll see here, I have a functional level for 2008, 2008 R2, 2012, 2012 R2, 2016. What Microsoft has done in the past, they have enhanced Active Directory in each operating system. And if you want to take advantage of those new capabilities, you would just select that functional level. There are no new enhancements related to Server 2019. So there's not a functional level as of yet for Windows Server 2019. I don't suspect there ever will be one because it's nothing different. It's not enhanced in any way. So here, if I choose a forest function level of 2012, that would mean in my forest, I could have domain controllers that run Windows Server 2012 or newer operating systems. So you'd have to run 2012, 2012 R2, 2016, 2019. No way could you run 2008 R2. It would simply fail to install Active Directory if you were on a domain controller older than Server 2012. Now, this is anywhere in my forest. The domain function level applies to the domain that we're creating right now. So if I leave this on 2016, the domain function level, that means every domain controller in this domain has to run Windows Server 2016 or newer. So Server 2019 has to be one of those two operating systems. But if you have other domains in the forest, they could run 2012, 2012 R2, what have you. Depends on what your needs actually are. Normally, if you're building a new forest and everything runs a certain level, you're not going to add older domain controllers. So I'm actually going to choose, you know what I'll do to make this exciting? We'll choose 2012 R2 for both forest and domain, and we'll see after Active Directory is installed how you can simply raise this. Because many of you will be in an environment where you already have a domain, forest, all that's already created. So when you upgrade the operating system, you need to know how to raise the function level, which is pretty easy, but we'll just set it back to 2012 R2 for now. This is automatically going to install DNS, the domain name service, for me. It's also going to be a global catalog server. That we get into more later on. And notice that is grayed out, so you cannot deselect the global catalog. And read-only domain controller, this could never be the first domain controller in a domain. A read-only domain controller would be an additional domain controller you create, but it is read-only, as the name implies. You could not create, modify, or delete any objects on it. Typically, you would put that in a branch office where you may have like lower physical security. I do need to set a password. This is the Directory Services Restore Mode password, or DSRM. If you need to restore Active Directory from like backup, you're going to be asked for this password. That is all done, so I'll just click Next. It says a delegation for this DNS server cannot be created because the authoritative parent zone cannot be found. All this means, looks like an error message, it's really not. I chose the domain name rtsnetworking.com. This is saying we looked for RTS networking and we couldn't find it in your environment. No worries. When we install Active Directory, it's going to install and configure everything in DNS. So you will always see this when you create a new forest. We'll click Next. It's going to generate the NetBIOS name. That is simply your name without the extension. So it's just RTS Networking. It drops the .com. The NetBIOS name always does. And the NetBIOS name is also limited to 15 characters. So if you build your own domain and choose some long name, you're only going to see the first 15 characters visible there. When we were talking about the prerequisites, one of the things I said was you would benefit from having the database and all the log files and the sysfile on a different physical drive than the operating system. But in our lab environment, we are fine to put this on the C drive. So this is always the default path no matter what. C Windows, then it creates this NTDS folder and a sysfile folder. So we're going to leave those paths exactly as they are and just choose Next. And would you believe that's it? We have created a domain, a forest, just by answering those few simple questions. I'll click Next. It's going to verify we meet the prerequisites. So if you did not have a statically assigned IP address, it would give you an error message here. We have passed all the checks, so you'll see prerequisite checks completed. All prerequisite checks passed successfully. So we'll just click Install. Now this does have to reboot after the install has completed, but once it comes back up, it will be a full domain controller. Our installation is now done. I'm going to sign in as administrator, and I'm going to enter my password, and it's just going to log us in. Now as Server Manager loads, we'll see not a lot has changed on this. If I go over on the left, you'll see ADDS, which stands for Active Directory Domain Services. I'll see my RTS-DC1, because that's now a domain controller. Every domain controller that you create will show up in this list. When I click on local server, this earlier said workgroup, and the name was workgroup. Now it says domain rtsnetworking.com. And if I go to tools, I have 5 Active Directory tools that show up. So we know this is now a domain controller. Pretty fascinating.